Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar event. We are presenting the Nintex K2 and Microsoft Power Platform Better Together webinar. We have a lot of exciting content to share with you, and I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest speakers. We have Joe from Ashling Partners and Andy from Nintex. So I'll hand things over to you, Joe, to start the introductions.
Well, thanks, Alex. My name is Joe Halfman from Ashling Partners, and I'm an experienced K2 architect, and I've worked with clients on the implementation of various Power Platform solutions as well. I'm really excited to share with you an example of how the Power Platform can easily integrate with and take advantage of the Nintex K2 workflow software.
And hello, everyone. My name is Andy Hayes, and I'm a solutions architect here at Nintex. And as a bit of a fun fact, I've been at Nintex since the K2 acquisition that happened 2.5 years ago. And prior to the acquisition, I was working at K2 for about 8 years.
All right, like I said, I'm really excited to kind of talk about the synergies between K2 and the Power Platform and really how they're better together. And if you think about it, we've got two really great platforms, and the K2 platform is really good at complex workflows, task management, and things like that. And whereas the overview, you look at the Power Platform and it's got great strengths. It connects to many different systems. We also have the ability to kind of drag and drop and do some really nice, easy flows, as well as very robust user interfaces down to pixel perfect if need be. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a high-level architecture of a K2 use case, and then I'm also going to go through a high-level architecture of a Power Platform use case. And with that, I'm going to have Andy just talk to you a little bit about the strengths of K2 as well as his use case.
Well, thank you, Joe. So to kind of talk about, why Nintex K2 and the Power Platform is just, simply better together, it all really starts with the obvious. And the obvious is that both platforms have serious strengths in different areas. Now, K2, it really shines when it comes to those kind of requirements where you need solutions with, dashboards and portals that stream data from multiple data sources and or workflows that have more complex requirements. And the Power Platform, its strengths really lie with its native integration into the Microsoft suite and the ability to listen out to third-party events such as Twitter or a Gmail account. And rather than failing with trying to do all of this with one solution or one platform, shall I say, by using both, you will succeed and deliver with a comprehensive enterprise-ready solution every time. So we can avoid that kind of Swiss Army knife approach by using only one platform. And both these platforms have intuitive drag and drop designers, so you can go off and build your UIs and logic without any code whatsoever. And they both also enable you to integrate with data sources such as, Oracle and SAP, which can be quite complex. And you don't need code as well to integrate with these third-party systems. So with these drag and drop designers, you can go off and deliver quickly. And this will help promote the return on investment with both these platforms. And of course, there is full integration between the Power Platform and K2 and vice versa. Now, as a very high level, Nintex K2 is a no-code/low-code application development platform. And what I mean by that is you can go off and build applications with portals and dashboards without any code whatsoever. However, we say no code/low code because you can inject code into the platform if you need to. We give you the controls to do so. It's not a hack or a workaround, but we find that the majority of our customers don't need to inject code whatsoever into K2. Now, there are three main strengths to the K2 platform. And the first one is our workflow engine. So if you want to go off and assign tasks to different users or different groups, or even assign tasks depending on a user's workload, execute your business rules and your business logic and talk to different systems, the workflow is fantastic for that. And the great thing about the workflow engine in K2 is there's no limitations, meaning you can go off and build any workflow pattern you like. You can have as many actions as you like, and you can have a workflow run for as long as you like as well. We've also got our forms engine. Now, I really don't like that name forms because K2 is more than just building a form to capture information from an end user. You can also go off and build forms to visualize data back to the end user as well, meaning you can go off and build those rich dashboards and portals as well. You've also got the ability to inject custom JavaScript, HTML, and CSS as well if you want additional control on the look and feel. And then we have our integration layer. And this is the reason why I fell in love with K2. We've got this technology called smart objects. And what smart objects essentially is an abstract layer between your data and the data you want to bring into your forms and your workflows. Now, what makes us unique and different in the market, and we've also got a patent for this technology, is that we don't store that data anywhere. It's not been stored in a temporary workflow variable or a temporary table. It's always a pure push and pull, which means your users are always going to get the latest and greatest data when they use the smart objects within the forms and the workflows. Now, what I've got here is a real world use case from one of our customers. And they came to us, about a year ago saying, we're looking at a way to automate our complaints and feedback management process. AKA, they wanted something to monitor things like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and grab any kind of posts that mention their organization's name. But they also want to further that process by, using that information and building out like a complex workflow to handle these requests. So for example, if it's the feedback, it goes to a particular area, or if it's a customer complaint, it needs to go to a particular or a skilled case manager. So this customer is getting a lot of value by not just using K2, but also using Power Automate within the process. So they use Power Automate to monitor these external social media sites such as Twitter. When a tweet has been tweeted into the Twitter sphere, including their organization's name, we'll use Power Automate to grab that tweet. We'll do some sentiment analysis. We can even do some language translation as well. And then we'll go off and pass that information to a K2 workflow. And within the K2 workflow, we'll use the sentiment analysis score to work out if it's more of a, if it's feedback or if it's a complaint. And if it is a complaint, we can do escalations and further complex processing within the K2 workflow itself. And what we also get with the K2 workflow is deeper reporting audit trails as well. And a good example for that is not only, if we're going to see a common or a particular trend with the feedback and the complaints, but we can also visit historical complaints as well. So we can see if it's the same person complaining or the same group as well. Now, onto my demo.
Now, the way this process can kick off is by someone, like a customer, going off and sending a tweet into the Twitter sphere mentioning your organization's name. Now, for this demo, I've got a fictional company called Cefalo, and let's go off and send a tweet saying, I can't wait to see what is next with Cefalo. When I go off and click tweet, we are using Power Automate to go off and monitor Twitter and to catch any tweets that have that fictional organization's name in there. When that tweet has been posted, we'll go off and create a new record within K2 with information regarding that tweet, such as the username, the date, and so on. And we'll also pass off information to start a K2 workflow. Now, since Power Automate has gone off and fetched that tweet from Twitter, it's passed that information to K2, and now your users will be welcome to a K2 application landing page or a dashboard. And remember, K2 is a drag and drop designer, so if you don't like this dashboard, or you want the look and feel to be a bit different, or you want to add and remove functionality, that's fine. You can use the drag and drop designers to do so. But this is a kind of like a typical dashboard our customers seem to go with. Now, in these dashboards, you're going to have quick access to things like comments. So if you want to go off and view comments regarding a particular item or add to the dialogue, you can. You can also go off and open up the metrics to understand what's happening within the process and working out what part of the process is working well and if there's any potential bottlenecks. And these K2 Report Center metrics is fantastic. You get a lot of information, and you can also use it to view historical information as well. You've also got the ability to go off and provide your users with a settings page. Now, what the settings page allows users with the right permission to do is update the threshold and logic within the workflow. So, rather than going into the K2 Designer and updating the workflow logic, you can provide your users a page where they can go off and update that logic directly from the form. Think of it like a self-service environment. You can lock this down as well. So, for example, the users need the right permission to not only read, but to make modifications as well. Also, within the dashboard, you've got the ability to go off and show gauges and charts, letting the user that's logged in to understand how well the particular process is working. In this scenario, it's showing us there's 3 cases that are currently open, 2 are currently open. They're all on target for the month, which is fantastic, and it's a split between complaints and feedback. Then we also have a list of all the in-flight processes. Now, I'm logged in with a user who's not a manager, so I can only see my stuff. But if my fictional manager were to log in, they will see their stuff, my stuff, and the other direct reports as well. But you can completely configure that logic and modify that filter. Now, in this list of active cases or in-flight processes, we're seeing things like the date received. So, for example, when that complaint was made or that tweet was sent. We're seeing who the originator is, if we can capture that name from a form or Twitter. We're seeing where the source is. In this scenario, it's going to be Twitter, but it could also be from a form or LinkedIn or WhatsApp as well. We can see who the case manager is, which is going to be me. And we've also got other important information like the stage and status and so on. You can add and remove information from this list view. And by clicking into this item, it's going to go off and open up a K2 case form or a task form. Now, within this task form, we're going to be showing and displaying all the information that we've captured within the process. Now, as a very high-level data, we're showing the end user things like the reference, who started it, due dates, and what the current status is as well. And I forgot to mention before that, K2, we've been around for 21 plus years. And we know for a fact that when your users are given a task, it's not just about approving or rejecting. Ultimately, that is going to be your outcome, but sometimes your users need to go off and grab more information. Now, if they go off and use something like WhatsApp or send an email to a colleague, straight away, your organization loses transparency on what is happening within the process. So with K2, you have the ability to go off and assign an ad hoc task to a different user or a different group straight from the task. You've also got the ability to go off and send a message via email or SMS, and you can configure K2 to receive that information and bring it back into the task as well. You can also go off and log a conversation with a user or group of users. And the real value for this is not only are we keeping all this information together, but let's just say you've got an audit in 6 years' time. And all you need to do is come back to this K2 case or K2 task, click on the audit tab, and straight away you'll be able to view all the information that has been said and you can understand why a particular decision had been made. Think of this as like a chronology. Now, my favorite feature of K2 is the view flow. So by clicking the view process button, this is going to go off and open up our view flow. And what the view flow is a bird's eye view or a read-only view of what is happening within the process. So if you go off and follow the green play button, you can see that's exactly where the workflow started off. And by following the green line, you can see exactly what has happened within the process. So for example, we've gone off and created a brand new case within K2. We've also created a friendly URL so external users can update anonymous pages with K2. And by following this logic, you can see here that this social source came from Twitter. From that, we've grabbed a tweet, we've done some sentiment analysis, and we've also updated the case with that sentiment analysis as well. And we've sent a tweet back to the person who sent the tweet with that friendly URL so they can add information to the case if they want to. By scrolling down on the view flow, we're using that sentiment analysis score to work out which way the workflow should go. In this scenario, the sentiment was high, so we passed this information to we've passed this K2 case to a feedback case manager. But if the sentiment was low, we would pass the complaint to a complaint case manager. Now, by going back into the dashboard, there's a couple of other things that we can do. Now, the first one is this person really wants to see what is happening next with our fictional company, Cephalo. And that's great. We can provide that person with that information by sending the roadmap. However, we've got business logic within the organization that we cannot send out the roadmap until an NDA contract has been put into place. So by using the information that we've already captured within the process, I can go off and click the Send NDA Contract button. And what that is going to do is go off and start an e-signature contract between myself, who's the case manager, and the person that sent out the tweet. Now, by going to the case manager's inbox, I've got the ability to go off and view my new email messages, one being the an email asking me to start reviewing the NDA contract and also signing the NDA contract. So by clicking the begin signing button, it's going to go off and show us the contract. We can go off and view the information if we want. And then we've got the ability to go off and click start signing. I'm just going to go off and use my name that's already been captured from Twitter and adopt a brand new signature. I've also been given a second email, which is destined for the case manager, who also needs to go off and click the begin signing button, which is going to open up the second part of the contract. But as you can see here, the previous person's name and date has already been applied to this contract. So once again, let's go off and click that start signing button. This time I'm going to use Andrew Hayes so we can see the difference between the two signers. And this time I'm going to go off and adopt a new signature that's been generated by Nintex eSign. Let's go off and click continue and adopt that signature, and let's go off and click apply signature and click finish. Now, Nintex eSign is going to send this document and the verification back to K2, and it's going to arrive back into the K2 dashboard. So once again, you can see in our documents and attachments view that the status is currently pending. And if I go off and quickly do a refresh, the status is now completed, meaning the send NDA contract button has now been disabled and the send roadmap button has now been enabled, allowing me to send off the roadmap to that particular user. But before I do that, I can quickly go off and double click on this item and quickly just check that the signatures have been put into place correctly before I go off and send that roadmap to that user. Perfect. Now I'm happy with this. I've sent out the roadmap. I've also offered this user a recommended discount. And as you can see here, all that dialogue has been added to our customer dialogue. where I can see it as a case manager and the customer or the user can also see it as well. And I'm happy with this. I do have the option to go off and send this to a complaint manager if required, but from what I can tell, everyone seems to be happy. So I can now go off and complete the case, and that will now finish that process within K2.
Thanks, Andy, for that amazing demo. What a great example of how K2 can take advantage of the Power Platform. Now I'm going to use a fairly common HR onboarding use case to illustrate how the Power Platform can be leveraged to create a mobile-friendly front end for submitting new onboarding requests while taking full advantage of the powerful K2 workflow engine for a complex workflow. I will also show how the integration between the platforms is implemented. In this example, as you see on the slide here, the HR onboarding application was built in K2 and did a great job of supporting the onboarding process. However, a request was made to allow mobile access for submitting requests and checking on the status. While there is some mobile support in K2, it's not a strength and it's quite limited. Therefore, the Power Platform was a great choice for providing that functionality. So here's a high-level overview of the architecture for the integrated solution. On the Power Platform side, there is an HR mobile app for providing an easy-to-use interface for submitting new requests and getting the status of onboarding requests. On the K2 side, there's an onboarding workflow for assigning all of the onboarding tasks along with HR onboarding application that the HR staff uses to manage the request and complete the required tasks. The key elements of this integration between the platforms are the the Power Automate K2 connector for starting K2 workflows, the Power Automate Cloud Flows, and K2's OData API. Now let's take a look at how all this comes together.
First, on the K2 side, there's a configurable and complex workflow for starting new requests and assigning tasks. Here's a quick look at the workflow in the K2 Designer. Here's the configuration form for the K2 onboarding solution. The onboarding is broken into phases with a defined order, as we see right here. Then within each phase, we can define tasks with a defined order in which they should be completed. Each task is also assigned a queue for various HR roles. This makes it possible to add and modify tasks as the business needs change. It would be very difficult to accomplish a dynamic and complex workflow like this in the Power Platform. The K2 application also has a dashboard where users can view and complete their assigned tasks. Now, on the Power Platform side, there's a mobile-friendly Canvas app. Here's that app where we can see the requests that we've made. If we want to, we can go into the details of each of those requests. In addition, I can look at the tasks and the status of each. And I can join in the discussion and add notes if I wanted to as well. So let's see how these two platforms can work together. I'm going to start by initiating a new request from the HR mobile app. I'm going to give a real simple name here, Ben Booker. Give Ben a job title of manager. Give him a position number. Comments here. Great hire. And Ben's going to start tomorrow. Now when I submit the request, what's going to happen is a Power Automate Cloud Flow is going to run, and it's going to take advantage of the built-in connector to K2 to start the workflow. So let's go ahead and get this started. So the workflow ran, and it submitted my new request. And when I refresh here, I see my new request for Ben Booker. Let's go ahead, jump back over to the K2 side. If I wait a second, I'm going to see, when I refresh here, the new task that just came in for Ben Booker. Here's one right here. So let's go ahead and let's open up this task. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete this task right away. And when I do so, it'll disappear from the task list. Now, let's go and jump back over to the mobile side of things. And let's take a look at Ben Booker. You'll see that if I look at the tasks give it a second to refresh here, it'll actually show that we completed that task for selecting computer equipment and cell phone for a new employee. Now, while I'm at it, I want to join in the discussion. I just want to add a new note here. I'm just going to say, please call Ben. Go ahead and add that. And then once again, a Power Automate Cloud Flow is going to run, and it's going to automatically interact with K2, but this time it's going to do it via the OData API. In doing so, what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a new note to that request. So if we jump back over to the K2 side, and I open up that one of the tasks for Ben, and I go ahead and I look at the request, and I join in the discussion here, I'll see my new note right here. Please call Ben. Now, if I'm working this task and they've asked me to call him, I can go ahead and I say, call Ben. Great guy. I'm going to go ahead and add that right here. Now, when I jump back over to the mobile app, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this, and you'll see I've got the new comment right there. Now that we've seen the applications in action, let's take a closer look at how the integration between the platforms is done. Now that we've seen the applications in action, let's take a closer look at the integration between how the platforms is done. On the Power Platform side, there are several cloud flows that interact with K2. Here we see the one that we use to add a new request. The key step in this flow is the Start Workflow step, which uses the Power Automate K2 connector to start the workflow. As you can see, it's very easy to pass in the required data and start the workflow. Here's another cloud flow used by the Power App. It uses the K2 OData API to retrieve data from the HR onboarding database and return the data back to the HR mobile app. The Power Automate HTTP action is used to call the API. The pattern in this flow is a common one for getting data from the K2 onboarding database and back into the mobile app. And finally, another use of the K2 OData API is for adding new records. Here's an example that uses a post to the K2 OData API to add a note to the discussion for a request. Now, if we flip over to the K2 side of things again, and we look at the management, we can see how easy it is to set up the OData integration. Any smart object in K2 can be exposed as an OData endpoint. Here are the smart objects exposed for the use by the Power Platform HR mobile app and flows. So, you can see how our solution takes advantage of the strengths of Power Platform and K2.
As these use cases show, there are synergies between Nintex K2 and the Power Platform that make it possible to efficiently build robust low-code automation and application solutions, and how to take advantages of the strengths of one platform to offset the weaknesses of another. And that makes it possible to utilize this best fit technology whenever possible. Now, hopefully these examples will give you insight into how you can design solutions to do the same. Now, as these use cases show, there are synergies between Nintex K2 and the Power Platform that make it possible to efficiently build robust, low-code automation and application solutions, and how to take advantages of the strengths of one platform to offset the weaknesses of another, making it possible to utilize the best fit technology whenever possible. Now, hopefully, these examples will give you insight into how you can design solutions to do the same.
Thank you for joining today's webinar event with Ashling Partners and Nintex. We hope to join you, or hope you can join us for our next event.